There's something about a fridge that makes it the heart of a home. It's where everything is stored, from the leftovers we pretend we'll eat but never do, to the bills, the magnets, and the memories. But in my case, it wasn't just groceries that ended up on the fridge. That's where I made the hardest decision of my life. I never intended to be the kind of person who would find out. I had convinced myself that I was just being paranoid, that I was overthinking things. My wife, Claire, was always so convincing, always so good at making me doubt myself. She had a way of masking everything with smiles and sweet words. I loved her, of course, but love has a funny way of making you ignore things you'd never accept in someone else. The first clue was a text I found, completely by accident. I didn't mean to go through her phone, but it was there, buzzing on the counter, and I couldn't ignore it. The message was from a number I didn't recognize, just a simple, "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe." It would have been nothing, just a harmless text between friends, but the way it made her act after she saw I had glanced at it was different. She snapped at me. "It's nothing," she said, with a tone I hadn't heard in years. The kind of tone that says you're not allowed to ask about this. I brushed it off, like I had been doing for months. But something was off. The way she acted when she was on her phone, the way she'd disappear for hours without telling me where she was going, the way she seemed distant in the mornings. I started to notice the small things. Her laugh didn't sound quite right anymore. Her smile didn't have that warmth I had once fallen in love with. But there's one thing I learned about myself over the years. I hate conflict. I've always hated it. I hated raising my voice. I hated arguing. I hated being that guy who accuses people. So I kept quiet. I kept telling myself I was just being insecure. I told myself that everything would go back to normal. Until one afternoon, when I came home early. I had a rare free day from work and decided to surprise Claire. I walked into the living room, expecting to find her reading a book or maybe catching up on her favorite show. Instead, I found her in a way I wasn't prepared for. She was on the couch, looking at her phone, but not in the way of someone catching up on social media. No, this was different. She was texting someone, and her face, it wasn't a casual look. It was soft, almost affectionate, and when she looked up and saw me standing there, I saw it in her eyes, panic. The silence between us was deafening. She jumped up quickly, clutching her phone to her chest like it was the most precious thing in the world. "What are you doing home so early?" she asked, her voice too high-pitched, like she was trying to act normal, but failing miserably. I didn't answer her. I just stood there, staring. That's when the truth hit me like a ton of bricks. It wasn't just a text or a bad day. This wasn't about me. It was about someone else. I walked into the kitchen and stood there for a moment, looking at the fridge. My gaze shifted to the stack of bills, the grocery list, and the family pictures. But then my eyes settled on something different, a piece of paper. Not just any paper, divorce papers. I hadn't planned on it. I hadn't even considered it until that moment. But in the haze of betrayal and confusion, something snapped inside me. I couldn't be the person who quietly waited for her to come back to me, who hoped things would magically fix themselves. No, this time, I was done pretending. I wasn't going to wait for the inevitable blow-up. I wasn't going to yell or cry or beg for answers. I'd do what she never thought I would. I'd make sure she knew I knew. So I did it. I taped the divorce papers to the fridge. I didn't put them in an envelope. I didn't hide them in a drawer. I taped them up for her to see, front and center. The fridge was the one place she always went to first, to check the milk, grab a snack, leave notes for the kids. I knew she'd see it there, and when she did, there would be no denying it. That night, I didn't confront her. I didn't raise my voice or demand answers. I simply went to bed. It was the quietest night I'd ever spent in our house. The silence between us was thick, almost suffocating. I didn't know if she'd say anything, or if she'd just pretend like it wasn't there. But I was prepared. I knew I couldn't fix this, but I could at least show her that I wasn't the fool I used to be. The next morning, I waited. I waited for her to walk into the kitchen, to see what I'd left for her. And when she did, I didn't know what to expect. But when she saw the papers, when her eyes scanned the words, I saw it. I saw the moment the realization hit her. I didn't need to say anything. She didn't say a word. She just stared at the divorce papers on the fridge, then back at me. The look in her eyes wasn't guilt. It wasn't even shame. It was shock. And in that moment, I realized something. She thought I'd never find out. She thought I was too weak, too complacent to ever do anything about it. But I had. And now, The game had changed. The morning after I taped the papers to the fridge, I didn't expect much. I knew Claire well enough by now to know that she'd probably try to act like nothing was wrong. She'd pretend that everything was fine, that nothing had shifted between us. But I was wrong. I woke up early, as I always did, and went about my usual routine, coffee, checking emails, trying to push away the weight of what was hanging over me. But then I heard her footsteps, soft at first, like she was trying not to make any noise. She came into the kitchen, just like I knew she would. I was sitting at the table, pretending to read something on my phone, but really, I was watching her. Watching for that moment when she'd see the papers. I had to fight the urge to glance up, to see her face immediately. But I couldn't. I had to let her process it on her own. She opened the fridge door, just like every other morning. For a split second, everything felt normal. Then, the sound of the fridge door slamming shut echoed through the kitchen. I didn't look up. I just sat there, my heart beating louder than I wanted it to. Dale. Her voice trembled just slightly. It was quieter than usual, more careful. That's when I knew. She had seen them. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. She was the one who had the answers. She took a deep breath, and for the first time in a long while, I heard her pause, really pause. Why? She asked, her voice cracking, barely above a whisper. I couldn't look at her. I still couldn't bring myself to confront her face to face. Instead, I kept my eyes on the phone in my hand, pretending to be absorbed by the screen. Why? I repeated her question under my breath, but the words felt heavy, suffocating. Because I know, Claire. I know everything. There was a long silence, so long that I almost thought she wasn't going to say anything else. I could feel the tension building between us, thick and suffocating. Finally, she spoke again, this time with a strange edge to her voice. What do you think you're doing? Is this some kind of joke? I don't know what you're talking about. I looked up then, unable to keep it in any longer. A joke? You think this is a joke? My voice was steady, but my heart was pounding in my chest. I stood up, walking toward her. You thought I wouldn't find out, didn't you? You thought you could keep this from me forever. Her eyes widened, and for a brief moment, I saw something in her face I hadn't seen in years. Fear. Real, raw fear. Dale, please, she stammered, trying to reach for my hand, as if everything could just be fixed with a touch. But I pulled away before she could make contact. I wasn't the same person anymore. Please. I laughed bitterly, my voice low. You're asking me to forgive you, to forget all of this? After everything? The tears in her eyes began to well up, and for a moment, I almost felt guilty. Almost. But then I reminded myself, this wasn't about me anymore. It was about what she had done to us, to our life together. She had broken something that couldn't be fixed with an apology or a tearful plea. I'm sorry, Dale, she whispered, her voice barely audible. I never meant for it to happen. I just didn't know how to fix things between us. Fix things? I scoffed, shaking my head. Claire, you didn't want to fix things. You wanted to escape, and I was too blind to see it. The silence hung between us again. Neither of us knew what to say next. How could we? How could you put into words the final collapse of everything you thought you knew? Claire took a shaky step back, her eyes flicking to the papers on the fridge. I didn't want this, Dale. I didn't want it to end like this. But in her voice, I heard something else, relief. She wasn't afraid of losing me. She was afraid of what she'd have to face now that the truth was out. She had thought she could get away with it, that I wouldn't be strong enough to confront her. But now that I had, the weight of it was too much to bear. She turned and walked out of the kitchen, leaving me standing there, still holding on to the remnants of the life I had once thought was unshakable. And as she left, I realized something else. This was just the beginning. I couldn't sit still. After Claire left the kitchen, I paced back and forth, my mind spinning. The house was too quiet now. The walls felt like they were closing in on me. Everything I had once known, everything I had once trusted, was slipping through my fingers, and I was helpless to stop it. I tried to convince myself that it wasn't real. Maybe it was all just a nightmare, a cruel trick my brain had played on me. But the cold, hard divorce papers taped to the fridge were a reminder that it was anything but a dream. I didn't want to believe it. I didn't want to accept that my wife, the woman I had spent the last decade with, had been lying to me. But the evidence was undeniable. And the worst part? I still didn't know who Evan was, or how long this had been going on. But I would find out. I had to. I grabbed my coat and left the house. The chill of the evening air slapped me in the face as I stepped outside, but I didn't feel it. I was numb, lost in my own thoughts. I walked aimlessly down the street, my mind a whirlwind of confusion and anger. What had happened to us? How had we gone from being so in love, so connected, to this? I thought back to the times we had shared, the trips, the quiet evenings on the couch, the way she used to look at me like I was the only person in the world. I wasn't a fool. I knew something had changed in Claire. I knew she had become distant, closed off. But I hadn't wanted to admit it. I hadn't wanted to see what was right in front of my face. I ended up at a bar. I wasn't there for a drink, really. I just needed to be around people, to drown out the thoughts that kept creeping in. But as I sat down, the bartender gave me a sympathetic glance. He had seen men like me before, lost, broken, looking for something to cling to. "You look like you've got a lot on your mind," he said, wiping down the counter. I didn't answer at first. I wasn't sure I wanted to. But eventually, I found myself telling him everything. About Claire, about the texts, about the phone calls, about the papers on the fridge. He didn't interrupt, just listened. "You know," he said when I finished, "sometimes the hardest thing is realizing you've been living in a lie. But you can't let it destroy you. You've got to decide what comes next." I didn't respond. I didn't know what came next. The only thing I knew for sure was that I couldn't go back to the way things were. I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine when it clearly wasn't. When I returned home, the house was still empty. Claire hadn't come back yet. I went to the fridge and stood there for a moment, staring at the divorce papers. It felt like an eternity. Part of me wanted to rip them down, to pretend like none of this was happening. But I couldn't. This was my reality now. I made a decision in that moment. I wouldn't just wait around for answers. I wasn't going to be passive anymore. It was time to take control. If Claire thought she could hide from the truth, then I would make sure it caught up with her. I spent the rest of the night making phone calls, gathering information. I needed to know everything. Where had she been going? Who was Evan? Why had she been so careless? By the time I heard Claire's car pull into the driveway, I was ready. Ready for whatever conversation we were about to have. But as I stood there, waiting for her to walk through the door, something unexpected happened. A part of me felt relieved. This was the end of one chapter, and the beginning of something new. I didn't know what the future held, but I knew it had to be better than living a lie. I wasn't the same man I had been when I first taped those papers to the fridge. When Claire finally came through the door, her eyes immediately darted to the fridge. For a split second, I saw her freeze, the color draining from her face. It was the moment I had been waiting for, but as much as I had prepared myself, I wasn't ready for the storm that was about to hit. She dropped her purse on the counter and took a step toward the kitchen, her eyes never leaving the papers. "Dale?" she whispered, as if saying my name was going to make it all go away. Why are they there? I didn't speak right away. I just watched her, waiting for the words to come. The anger, the confusion, all of it had been building up inside me for so long. And now that the moment had arrived, I wasn't sure where to begin. "You know why?" I finally said, my voice low but steady. "You've been lying to me, Claire. For months. Maybe longer. I don't even know anymore." Her face twisted with guilt, and I saw her lips tremble. But instead of the remorse I had expected, there was something else in her eyes, frustration. She wasn't sorry, not really. She was angry. Angry that I had figured it out. "You don't understand," she said, her voice rising. "It wasn't like that, Dale. It just happened." I laughed, bitterly. "It just happened? Is that your excuse? You think I'm stupid enough to believe that?" Her face crumpled, and for a brief moment, I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. But then the anger came flooding back. All the times she had acted distant. All the times I had stayed quiet, hoping things would get better. "Who is he?" I asked, my voice sharp. "Who is Evan?" Claire recoiled, taking a step back like I had slapped her. "It's not like you think," she said quickly, her words stumbling over each other. "I didn't want to hurt you. I swear I didn't. I just what?" I interrupted, cutting her off. What could possibly justify this? "How long, Claire? How long has this been going on?" She looked away, her eyes searching the floor, the walls, anywhere but me. "It was just a mistake," she whispered, barely audible. "It didn't mean anything. It was a way to escape, to feel something again." I felt my stomach twist at her words. "A mistake? Is that what you call it?" I took a step toward her, closing the distance between us. "Do you think that makes it okay? Do you think that excuses what you've done?" She shook her head, tears brimming in her eyes. No, it doesn't excuse it. But I didn't know how else to deal with everything. I stood there, trying to process what she was saying. I wanted to believe her. I wanted to think that maybe this was all just a bad phase, that we could work through it, that everything could go back to how it used to be. But deep down, I knew it wasn't that simple. So what now? I asked, my voice steady, though my chest felt like it was caving in. What do we do now, Claire? You've shattered everything. You've broken us. For the first time in our conversation, she stepped toward me. Her hand reached out, trembling, but I couldn't bring myself to take it. I want to fix it, she said, pleading. I want to make it right. I'll do anything. The words felt hollow, as if she were just saying what she thought I needed to hear. I couldn't trust her anymore. Not after everything that had happened. Not after how easily she had tossed me aside for someone else. You can't fix it, I said, my voice barely a whisper now. You can't just undo everything with a few words. It's over, Claire. I'm done. Her eyes widened in shock, like she hadn't expected me to say that. But I was done. Done being the fool. Done pretending that everything would somehow get better if I just ignored the cracks in our relationship. I couldn't keep living in this false reality. I don't want this, she said, tears streaming down her face. Please, Dale. I love you. I shook my head, turning away. If you loved me, you wouldn't have done this. You wouldn't have lied. You wouldn't have betrayed me. There was no more to say. No more apologies could undo what had been done. No more promises could fix the broken trust. I had to move forward, even if that meant leaving everything I had known behind. I didn't look back as I walked out of the kitchen, the divorce papers still on the fridge, staring back at her. The end had come, and there was no turning back. I didn't expect her to beg. I thought she'd fight back harder, try to explain herself more, but after I said those words, everything changed. The room went quiet, and for a moment, I felt a strange peace. The weight of holding everything in, the years of doubt and suspicion, all of it seemed to lift for just a second. It wasn't the relief I thought it would be, but it was something. Claire stood there, tears streaking down her face, but there was no fire left in her. I could see it in her eyes, the realization that everything she had built was crumbling. For the first time, I could tell she wasn't thinking about Evan or about her own guilt. She was thinking about losing me, but I couldn't feel sorry for her. I'd given her all my trust, and she had shattered it into a million pieces. I had spent so long convincing myself that everything was fine when it was falling apart. Now, there was no going back. I walked past her, heading toward the door. I didn't look at her again. I couldn't. She had been standing in the doorway of my life for so long. But now I was done letting her hold me in place. You can't just leave, Dale, she called after me. Her voice cracked, a mixture of pleading and fear. We need to talk about this. Please. I paused but didn't turn around. The words felt so empty now. What's there to talk about, Claire? You made your choice. You didn't think I'd find out, but I did. I could hear her footsteps behind me, but I didn't stop. I didn't want to hear any more apologies, any more excuses. I had been silent for too long, and I wasn't going to keep listening to her plead for something I couldn't give her. I opened the front door and stepped outside. The night air was cold, but I felt the need to be far away from her, from everything. I walked down the street, my mind a blur of thoughts, some jumbled, some sharp. I wanted to scream, to punch something, to let the anger out, but I couldn't. I needed to be away from it all. I ended up at the park, sitting on a bench, staring up at the stars. They seemed so distant, so unaffected by the chaos of my life. Maybe that's how I felt. Distant. Removed. For the first time, I realized how far apart I had been from Claire for months. No, for years. I had been living in the shadow of a lie. It wasn't just the affair. It was everything. The way we stopped talking, stopped caring. The way she had slowly slipped away without me noticing, and I had let her. Maybe I wasn't as blameless as I thought. I stayed at the park for hours, the cool air biting into my skin, but I didn't care. I needed this time to think, to let it all sink in. When I finally decided to go back, the house was quiet again. Claire was gone, and all that remained were the echoes of a life that no longer made sense. The fridge still held those papers, but I didn't take them down. Not yet. I wasn't ready. There was something symbolic about leaving them there, a reminder that this was real. There was no going back. And as I walked through the door, I realized that I had taken the first step towards something new. Something that didn't involve lies or betrayal. It was time to rebuild, to start over, even if that meant doing it alone. The next few days passed like an endless blur. I didn't hear from Claire. I didn't expect to, either. The papers were still on the fridge. They had become an unspoken monument to the mess we were in. Every time I opened the door, they were there, staring back at me, daring me to make the next move. I kept to myself, avoiding friends, avoiding work. My mind was too heavy with what had happened. I couldn't focus on anything, not the simple things I used to enjoy. I'd catch myself staring at the TV without registering a single word, or walking through the house, like a ghost haunting the rooms I used to share with her. I hadn't even realized how much I had been holding my breath until I wasn't holding it anymore. The air felt thinner, like it was hard to breathe, hard to think straight. Everything I thought I knew about my life was crumbling. I kept questioning myself. Why didn't I see it sooner? How could I have missed all the signs? But there was something else eating away at me now, something I wasn't ready to admit. It wasn't just the affair. It was the fact that, despite everything, I missed her. I missed the way she used to laugh, the way her hand would rest on mine when we watched TV, the way her eyes would light up when she talked about something she was passionate about. I missed her presence, even if it had become distant, even if it had been tainted with lies. I couldn't bring myself to call her, though. The thought of hearing her voice made my stomach twist. I wasn't ready for whatever explanation she might offer, even if I knew I didn't want to hear it. She had already said too much, or rather, not enough. Then, on the fourth day after the confrontation, she came back. I was sitting in the living room, flipping through a magazine, barely registering the words, when I heard the soft click of the front door opening. I didn't have to look to know it was her. It was that same hesitant, unsure sound. The kind of sound someone makes when they don't know if they're walking into a war zone or a safe haven. She stepped inside slowly, like she wasn't sure if she should be there. "Dale," she said quietly, standing in the doorway, unsure of what to say next. I didn't move. I didn't even look at her. I just kept flipping through the magazine, pretending like I wasn't aware of her standing there, looking for the right words. But there was nothing to say, was there? What could she say that would make this right? I've been thinking about everything," she said, her voice wavering. "And I know I messed up. I know I hurt you. I can't change what happened, but I want to try. I want to fix this, Dale." I finally put the magazine down and looked at her, really looked at her. Her eyes were red from crying, her hair messy from the days she'd spent away. She looked small, vulnerable, almost. But I wasn't sure I cared anymore. "You can't fix it," I said, my voice cold, the words feeling foreign in my mouth. "Not after everything, Claire. You've already made your choice. And I'm not the one you chose." Her face crumpled, and I saw the tears threaten to spill over. But I couldn't let myself feel sorry for her. I couldn't. "I know," she whispered. "I know I lost you, and I don't know how to fix it. But I need you to know that I never wanted this. I was just—" "Don't," I interrupted, standing up now, my hands clenched at my sides. "Don't make excuses for it. You made your choice, Claire. You chose him. And now you have to live with the consequences." Her mouth opened and closed, like she was searching for words that wouldn't come. "I don't know what else to say," she said, her voice almost broken now. "I never meant to hurt you, Dale. I never meant for any of this to happen." I shook my head, stepping toward her, my mind clearer now than it had been in days. "You didn't mean to hurt me? Then why did you do it? Why did you lie to me? Why did you make me feel like I was crazy when I questioned you?" Claire flinched, stepping back, as though I had physically struck her. And maybe, in that moment, I had. But it didn't matter. The damage was done. I just wanted to feel something again," she said, her voice barely audible. "Everything felt so empty between us. And then Evan came along, and it felt like I could breathe again. But I know I've ruined everything. I know I've lost you." There it was. The truth, buried in her desperate explanation. She hadn't wanted to fix our marriage. She had wanted to escape it. And I was just the person standing in her way. "I don't know if I can forgive you," I said, my voice harsh, but honest. "I don't know if I can ever look at you the same way again. I can't live like that." I turned away, feeling the weight of it all pressing down on me. She stood there, silent, behind me. The only sound in the room was her soft sobs, and in a way, it was the most fitting end to this chapter of our lives. The silence stretched on, but I knew, deep down, that it was over. There was no coming back from this. Not for us. Not for me. As I walked out of the room, I heard her call my name once more, but I didn't turn back. There was nothing left to say. The days following Claire's return were almost unbearable. I stayed mostly in my own thoughts, unable to shake the feeling that my life had been torn apart beyond repair. Claire tried to approach me, tried to talk, but each time, I felt more and more distant. It wasn't that I didn't care, I did, too much, in fact. But something had changed inside me. She had taken away the one thing I couldn't get back, trust. Each morning, the air felt heavier. It wasn't just the absence of her presence. It was the silence, the awkwardness that lingered between us, thick and suffocating. She kept asking if we could talk things through, but how could we? How could we fix something that had been broken so completely? One evening, after a particularly tense dinner where neither of us spoke much, Claire turned to me, her face full of hope. "Dale," she began, her voice trembling slightly. "I can't fix the past, but I'm here now. I want to try again, to make things work." I didn't know what to say. How could I even think about starting over when the past was still fresh, still burning in my mind? It felt like I was living in a parallel universe, one where the woman I loved, the woman who was supposed to be my partner, had betrayed me in the most fundamental way. "I don't think I can," I whispered. My voice wasn't as strong as I wanted it to be, but it was honest. "I don't think I can go back to the way we were, Claire." She reached for my hand across the table, but I pulled it away before she could touch me. "You've already made your choice," I said, my words cold, even though my heart was anything but. "I'm not the same man I was before all this. I can't just forget. I can't pretend." Her face fell. The tears that had been held back for days finally spilled over, but I couldn't bring myself to comfort her. She didn't deserve that. Not after everything. "I'm sorry, Dale," she whispered, the words barely escaping her lips. "I never wanted to hurt you." But it was too late for apologies. The damage had been done, and no amount of regret could change that. Every time I looked at her, all I saw was the betrayal. Every time she touched me, all I felt was the distance between us. "I think it's time for you to go," I said, my voice firm, but beneath the surface, it cracked. Saying those words felt like an impossible thing, but I knew they were the only thing left to say. Claire's eyes widened in shock, but she didn't fight it. Instead, she stood up, slowly, as if she knew the truth in my words. "I'll pack my things," she said quietly, her voice hollow. I didn't watch her leave. I couldn't. The door closed behind her, and the silence returned, this time heavier than before. The space that had once been filled with love, laughter, and shared moments was now empty. And it was the emptiness that hurt more than anything. In the days that followed, I didn't know what to do with myself. The house felt like a shell, and I was lost inside it. I had spent so much time focusing on fixing things, on salvaging what was left of us, but now that she was gone, I didn't know where to start. I didn't know who I was anymore. But as I sat in the quiet, in the midst of the mess she had left behind, I realized something. I was free. The weight of trying to fix what had been broken was no longer on my shoulders. It was a bitter kind of freedom, but it was freedom nonetheless. I had no idea what the future held. I didn't know if I would ever be able to trust again, or if I would ever love the way I once had. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to spend another day in a life that didn't feel like mine anymore. For the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. The weeks after Claire left were a blur, a mix of chaos and peace that somehow seemed to balance each other. I spent most of my time in the quiet of the house, slowly sorting through the mess she had left behind. I didn't feel the anger as much anymore. What had been rage and betrayal was starting to fade into something else, a kind of resolve. I didn't need her. I had lived my life before Claire, and now I was going to live it again, without the weight of the past holding me down. I started focusing on myself for the first time in years. I took up running again, something I had given up when life had gotten busy. I reconnected with friends I had pushed aside for the sake of our relationship. And most importantly, I started to remember who I was outside of being her husband. I was Dale, the man I had lost touch with, but who had always been there, waiting to resurface. Then came the phone call. It was a Thursday afternoon when the number I didn't recognize flashed on my phone screen. I almost didn't pick up, but something told me I should. "Hello." I answered. "Dale." A voice I didn't immediately recognize came through the line. "This is Evan." I felt a chill run through me, but I held my composure. "What do you want?" "I know this is going to sound strange," he said, his voice uneasy, but I think you deserve to know the truth. Claire, she's been lying to both of us." My mind raced as he continued. "She told me that she had separated from you, that you guys were done. I didn't realize. I didn't know she was still married." The words hit me like a punch to the gut, but I wasn't surprised. Claire had used him, just like she had used me. She had been playing a dangerous game, and now the truth was catching up to her. "I didn't know about you until after," Evan continued. "But when I found out, I started to feel guilty. I want to make things right." I was quiet for a long moment, taking in what he had said. Then, I spoke, my voice colder than I intended. "You don't owe me anything, but I think you owe yourself an apology. You're not the only one she lied to." I hung up, and for the first time in weeks, I felt a sense of calm. Claire wasn't going to escape this. She had been living in the illusion that she could keep us both in her orbit, but the truth was always going to come to light. A few days later, I received a letter in the mail. It was from Claire's lawyer, and when I opened it, I could feel the finality of it all. Claire had filed for divorce. But what shocked me was the attached settlement offer. She was offering a hefty amount of money, more than I would ever need, to keep things quiet. It was her way of trying to buy my silence, to make me go away quietly. But I wasn't the man I had been when I first found out about the affair. I wasn't going to let her buy her way out of the mess she had made. Instead, I contacted my lawyer and decided to fight for everything I was entitled to. I didn't need the money, but I wasn't going to let her walk away from this unscathed. If she thought she could manipulate me one last time, she was wrong. As the legal battle dragged on, I started to see Claire's true colors in a way I hadn't before. She was desperate, scrambling to hold on to whatever she could. The more she tried to control the narrative, the more it slipped through her fingers. The day the court ruling came down, I stood outside the courthouse, feeling the weight of everything settle in. I had won. Not only had I secured my financial future, but I had reclaimed my dignity, my sense of self. Claire's lies had caught up with her, and now she was paying the price. I didn't gloat. I didn't revel in her downfall. But there was something satisfying in knowing that karma had taken its course. She had thought she could destroy me, that she could have her cake and eat it too, but in the end, it was her that lost everything. Months later, I looked back on those dark days and realized how far I had come. I was living a life I hadn't even dreamed of, a life of freedom, of peace, and of self-respect. I had finally let go of the past, and with it, I had made room for something better. I wasn't looking for revenge. Life had already given it to me. What I had now was the future, one that was mine to shape. And for the first time in a long time, I wasn't afraid. I was ready. Claire, on the other hand, was still picking up the pieces of a life she had destroyed. And I knew, without a doubt, that she would never be able to rebuild it. Not with the same honesty, not with the same trust. What she had lost, she would never get back. But I had won, and that was enough.